This corner of South Central Los Angeles is as famous as any neighborhood in America. It is Watts. In some ways, life is harder than 30 years ago. Fewer jobs, more poverty, drugs. But this is a story about what has gotten better. They used to call it the reservation. The riot lasted 4 days and 4 nights, covered an area 20 times the size of Watts.
Anyone remaining upon the street will be arrested. I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly. And in the name of the people of the state of California, I command you to disperse immediately.
The eruption followed years of frustration and thwarted hopes. One man looked at these streets and saw something else. He had a vision of houses and trees and clean streets. He saw a thriving community with its own hospital and shopping center. He saw young people who would be proud to be from Watts.
We're from Watts! We're from Watts! Mighty, mighty Watts! Mighty, mighty Watts! We're from Watts!
The man is Ted Watkins.
I was born in Meridian, Mississippi in 1923, and when I was 13 years old, I had a fight with a white Western Union mail carrier, and I broke one of his ribs. And my understanding from my folks was that the Western Union whites were going to lynch me the next day, and I had to get out of town at midnight. So what I did, I caught a train called the Illinois Central in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and went to New Orleans with a tag on my neck, and then caught a train called the Agronaut from New Orleans to Los Angeles, and arrived in Los Angeles with a few bucks in my pocket and began immediately to trying to be a man.
Watkins learned how to be a mechanic. Eventually, he got a job at the Ford plant and joined the union. Watkins was elected and re-elected to the union negotiating committee.
Almost all my life, been an organizer of one type or another. When I was living in the projects, I was a tenant council organizer and organized tenants. When I was in the shop in the Ford Motor Company, I was organizing the workers. And when I came out here and started working in the community, I started organizing people in the community. And that's what the Watts Labor Community Action Committee came out of, was that organizing effort.
United Auto Workers President Walter Reuther named Watkins an international representative and assigned him to work full-time in Watts. The administration in Washington had just declared war on poverty. But local politicians like Mayor Yorty had a say in how the anti-poverty money was spent.
The city of Los Angeles did not want to be involved in doing anything in Watts. Sam Yorty had felt that to do anything in Watts was like rewarding the rioters.
Watts lacked housing, jobs, services. The closest hospital was many miles and a fistful of bus transfers away. But Ted Watkins had a master plan. With a $2 million loan from Ruther and the union, Watkins started buying up empty land.
All of my peers and doctors, lawyers, and merchant chiefs felt that we were crazy to buy land in this decrepit and rundown community. In about 7 years, we were putting houses on that land.
He was after control. Control of future development in Watts Willowbrook.
One of the things I think is by the time that we had spent the $2 million, it was too late to stop us.
He nurtured the relationships with the politicians to work within the system, and at the same time, I believe he was always doing an education job on the politicians, showing them what had to be done and how to do it.
Mayor Yorty had to come to Watts to see for himself. WLCAC was just 2 years old.
Where are you going to take the mayor?
We're going to take him on a tour around Watts and different projects and programs that we got going.
What programs specifically?
Well, we've got a poultry ranch. We're building a senior citizens park on 104th and Graham. We've got the growing grounds. We've got the credit union. We've got the consumer action program. We've got the best pocket parks that we've built. And we wanted to take the mayor around and show him to them.
And your training program for the hardcore unemployed, I think, is just great.
Thank you.
The enterprise and hard work were paying off. Watts Labor was already a local institution and an opportunity. People wanted the work.
Oh, these guys are wonderful. And nobody bothers this stuff. Nobody damages it or anything else because they know that the guys are right out of this area that are doing it.
Yeah.
And this is what's so good about it. And we're proving that it can be done by these guys.
Watts Labor was running work programs that turned the youth of Watts, the rioters, into a productive force. They were everywhere, cleaning up the mess and farming the land under the power lines. Watkins leased it for $1 a year and got the water for free. He took it from the fire hydrants.
We used to have the thing called the growing grounds.
Right.
And we was growing greens and collards and all this stuff. And I used to sometimes reflect back and I wonder if he was growing us too, and I think he was. Ted always had a thing where you work with the kid. You'd fire people for carrying clipboards.
Right.
You'd fire people for carrying that because when you carry a clipboard, you can't do no work. I didn't know how to do anything, really. So I ended up on work crews with the Concentrated Employment Program, planting trees on Central Avenue and painting telephone poles with whitewash.
One of the things that, came up in one of the magazines that I had read was that chlorophyll from the trees helped to clean the air of the pollutants. And I had to assume that since we had no trees, we wasn't getting no chlorophyll to clean up the pollutants in the air. And the pollutants were deadly as far as we were concerned. So we began to plant trees.
Ted came up with an idea about taking advantage of vacant city-owned lots and building housing because we had a housing shortage. And so we began to embark upon a housing development strategy which has continued all the way through to this day.
Everyone who lives here in Franklin Square was on welfare when they moved in. 20 years later, they pay $1 for the deed and own their own homes. Franklin Square is a textbook case of Ted Watkins' ingenuity.
Number one, the land was owned by the city, the Community Redevelopment Agency. And number two, houses were available from the expansion of the airport and the corridor for the freeway. We were able to convince the city and the airport authority that the greatest thing that they could do was to give us those houses so that we could recycle them.
he was able to purchase these houses for $1 a piece, $1 a piece. And I'm talking 3, 4, 5-bedroom homes, single and 2-story. But there was one condition, and that condition was he had to move them.
We'd cut them off the foundation, we'd stick them on wheels, and we'd roll them down Imperial at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's a real gas to see a house rolling down Imperial Highway. We'd put it on a new foundation, and we designed a program where we employed 300 young men and women to learn all about the building and construction trades.
I hadn't really established what I was going to do in my life in terms of a job or in terms of a career. But most of us were just kind of like off the street guys who learned as we went along. This was an opportunity for me to learn a trade.
There was just one problem with Franklin Square. 39 houses, 1,500 applicants.
Of course, Mr. Reagan has a theory that if we tighten our belts for a while, things will get better. There'll be better times ahead.
I think that's all right if you weigh 300 pounds, but if you only weigh 100 pounds, you may not be there when it's finally get straightened out.
Suppose you had a crystal ball instead of a coffee cup. What will Watts be like in another 17 years?
If we continue in the direction that we are headed in cutting out all of the support that a community like this is getting, not only Watts, but New York, Washington, D.C., and Detroit, Michigan, possibly people will be at war.
In April of 1992, the fires swept through south central Los Angeles and reached to the edge of Beverly Hills. South Central has changed since the 1965 riot. The population now is about half Latino. There are more poor people. The rioters were more diverse this time, and the riot was bigger. In Watts, no one touched the shopping center. The women at the homeless shelter protected it from harm. But headquarters was looted and burned to the ground.
I was here when the first waves came through the gate, and they came through with automobiles busting down doors. And it's a very desperate situation. And anything can happen during that kind of uprising. Anything. I was shot at 6 times. I know that I'm suffering. I know that. Because at night, before I can go to sleep, I'm thinking about that toy train that was gone. I'm thinking about the jukebox. I'm thinking about all of the other things that are not here anymore. I think about going down here and getting a can of oil from the stock we had, and then remember that the oil ain't there no more. You know, it's a lot of devastation here.
28 years.
Perhaps the clues to the future of Watts' labor can be found in the organizing lessons of its past. Ted Watkins still relies on his uncanny ability to turn loss into opportunity and to stick to his central mission, building in the here and now.
I'm looking for answers. I'm not looking for obstacles. I'm looking for somebody to tell me how, rather than to tell me all of the things of why not, or how we can't do this or do that. I think I have proven, basically, that we can do most of the things that it takes for a community to survive.